Folks, this is the first three-way video blog conversation I've had, so this is cool. So I'm going to start right off the bat. We're going to go move left to right. Deshaan, introduce yourself.
Hello, D'Sjon Dixon.
Rick?
Rick Tripp.
And gentlemen, talk about your idea for a baseball stadium in Oakland for the Athletics. And who'd like to go first?
I would say that's Deshaun's baby because it's his concept. I'm in a supporting role.
You got it. Deshaan, it's your platform. You're on.
Well, I think a stadium for Oakland A's in downtown is the most viable solution, the most viable site. First off, it frees up Coliseum City for the Raiders, and a lot of things are going on right now downtown that the stadium complements very nicely. The city wants to do a whole lot of things downtown. They want shopping and retail. They want nightlife. They want all type of entertainment. And what the 365 component does, it feeds right into everything that the city wants and that they need, that they're asking for. And basically, this design is a vision.
And I saw it, and I'm very impressed with what you put together. Congratulations, first of all. And folks, tell them the website where they can, if as they're watching this, go to and have a look at the design as they're watching the video.
www.stadium365.com.
Okay, now, for folks who are watching this who want some backstory, who may be in Bangladesh or Kentucky watching the basketball game, the story here is that we're in a situation where within 5 years the City of Oakland and the County of Alameda could lose all three of its sports teams because of facilities inadequacies. And there have been a number of competing proposals, but Deshaan has come up with an ingenious one that goes right along what is part of the Oakland Estuary at what used to be, I think, the old Moore shipbuilding property from about 40, 50 years ago. And it's also now the partial focus of the Mike Ghielmetti proposed Brooklyn Basin development. So, and Rick Tripp is in a supporting role as Rick. Is it proper to call you a developer in this instance, or?
Yeah, that's what I've been up to for the past 30 or 40 years.
So it's proper
development. I came to meet Deshaan at some community meetings revolving around the need for a Raiders stadium primarily, but all Oakland sports to keep those teams from relocating to other cities, San Francisco, San Jose, what have you. And Deshaan began to share his vision for Estuary Park, and it dovetailed a lot with what I was telling Mayor Kwan and Deanna Santana and Fred Blackwell back in that administration, that if you have two substantial economic drivers in the likes of a Raider stadium and an A's stadium, my thought as a developer is that each one of those individual projects can be the driver for redeveloping an individual area of Oakland. You put both of those economic drivers in the same area, Coliseum City in this case, I think you lose some of the impact and some of the punch you can have versus taking those two multi-$100 million, if not billion-dollar drivers and putting them in two separate areas that need that economic engine for redevelopment. And as things have progressed, we've seen some of the conceptual ideas for Brooklyn Basin, for downtown Oakland, some of the things south of JLS that folks have talked about for a good many years, and the underused area that is Estuary Park. So it dovetailed with my thought that take those economic drivers and improve two separate neighborhoods and get double the bang for the buck.
Exactly.
Now,
before
we get to, we'll come back to that in a moment with Deshaan to comment, but I just want to do some house cleaning for viewers who may not be familiar with either one of you, because right now it still sounds like inside baseball. Deshaan, introduce yourself and tell them about what you do.
Well, I'm at work right now. I'm a designer, project designer at SGPA Architecture, probably the best architecture firm in the world.
Oh, by the way, as a tip, look up at the camera, by the way.
Okay.
There you go.
Maybe I should readjust my screens.
Perfect. Now we can look at you in the eye. I can see you. I was like, go ahead. You were
Yeah. So that's it.
Okay, and Rick, yourself.
Like I mentioned earlier, I've been in development for many, many years, probably more than I care to remember. I was intensively involved in the search in Sacramento for a new Sacramento Kings arena, and led one of the development teams making proposals there. We scored tied for fourth of 7 proposals, and I think a lot of that was, frankly, due to some of the nuances of our financial package we wanted to put together. Beyond that, we scored very, very well with all the other proposals. In 2006, I began preliminary conversations, and they haven't borne the fruit that I thought they would, with the San Diego Chargers and Mark Fabiani, Dean Spanos' point person down there, to bring some of our concepts to the Chargers Stadium. And we're still engaged a bit there, but there are certain stumbling blocks that are in the way of the Chargers going forward right now. And maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I hadn't really put much effort into trying to figure out a solution in Oakland until I was asked to attend one of these community meetings, met some of the folks involved, and realized that some of the solutions, some of the financial elements that I could bring to the table would potentially work in Oakland. And then one conversation led to another, introductions to the likes of Supervisor Miley and Haggerty, and Chris Dobbins, of course, with the JPA and Mayor Kwan's administration, that sort of thing. I got more and more involved in those discussions, and that brings us to today, where I still believe that Deshaan has the perfect answer for an A's situation.
I agree.
I just don't see A's ownership right now getting overly excited about Coliseum City, quite frankly.
And I want to come back to something that Deshaan was going to say before I did the house cleaning segment. Deshaan, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
Well, that's basically, we want to generate income in both parts. East Oakland is definitely an area that, is prime and needs to be, revitalized. But last time I checked, downtown Oakland wasn't necessarily, Disneyland. So at the same time, if we can connect 2 birds with 1 stone and connect both of those, East Oakland to downtown, via through the estuary, I think it's a win-win for everybody. The team gets to make money, the city gets to make money, and you got two neighborhoods that are prime, ready for this opportunity, that they can, use this as a platform and take off. They already have a lot of things going on, so this is just complimentary.
Now, I have inputted, and you don't know this now, but I will, images from your design as we're talking. Tell my viewers what kind of development is, starting with the stadium and its capacity.
Well, this is basically a stadium that is, very creative, innovative way of thinking about it, but it's perfect for Oakland. The way Oakland, what they're known for, their creativity and their vision, this is strong past of being, having an identity. And this is a statement, I think, that Oakland is embracing. It's kind of along the same dynamics as the Cathedral of Light on Lake Mary. It's not your typical traditional church, but it looks right and it fits right, and Oakland is ready for something like that, even with baseball.
Talking about a capacity of what, 18,000, 30,000 seats?
I think we're going for 36,000 and pushing it to be a potential of 45,000 if need to be. It's definitely an intimate neighborhood park. It's scaled for the community, for the neighborhood, to have something that they can be home to, something that they can, claim as theirs. So it takes a whole new, perception of home field advantage. The idea of how it fits in with the urban fabric is really, it's very site specific. You cannot take this ballpark and pick it up and move it somewhere else. The way that everything that's going on downtown Oakland, we are trying to bring that all and connect them all. So nothing is felt like it's an add-on or something that wasn't supposed to be a part of it. Now it just got thrown on. You have a chance to come from scratch and put it all together, include everything from the dynamics of the Bay Trail, Lake Mare, the Estuary Channel, Measure DD, Brooklyn Basement, Oakland Ninth, and everything that Oakland wants to do in Victory Court. I think that this will be the way that it has to be done for Oakland. I like it downtown. Oakland, well, baseball in general is a family sport. It's dynamic in that way where you want to have. It's a spectator sport, so you want to have all the views, all the dynamics, everything around you at your disposal. And I think the downtown area feeds into that the most. So even before the games, after the games, during the games, the 365 component allows you to be able to access a part of the neighborhood, even if you're not a baseball fan. There's something will attract you to this park, from Lake Mare. 365 days out.
Rick, did you have something you want to add to that?
I'm just listening to D'Sjon's explanation, and I've had occasion to talk with him one-on-one many times and see what his vision is. And when he talks, I was waiting for him to use the words, and he finally did. It was that urban fabric, and what he's come up with is a complementary continuation of that urban fabric. And you heard in what he was just saying, all of the elements that I can't speak to off the top of my head, but all the elements of that urban fabric that his project serves across the board. He talks about Brooklyn Basin and the estuary and access to the lake and so many things I can't even begin to touch on off the top of my head, but he's thought this through and come up with this extremely site-specific plan that takes best advantage of all the elements that are there. If you have a chance to sit down and just listen to him, it flows and it makes sense.
What, in terms of, let's shift to the first aspect regarding Brooklyn Basin, and we've talked about this off camera, but I want to get this on camera. Where does Mike Ghielmetti stand in terms of this concept and the possibility of it being integrated in or replacing Brooklyn Basin? What's the situation from your two understanding of you two gentlemen?
If I could jump in on that, sure. My understanding, I'm not feet on the ground in Oakland, just so we set that part of the stage. D'Sjon is feet on the ground in Oakland, and he's got that understanding of the dynamics of other development that either is proposed or stalled or ongoing. So he's going to be best to speak to that. And frankly, what I gather from those, I would call them secondary projects of the stadium, I gather that from D'Sjon because he has his finger on the pulse of that. So I defer there, D'Sjon, for you to answer that.
So, John, we talked about this with Mike Ghielmetti off camera. I just want to get this on camera.
Sure.
Yeah, because people are going to ask, of course.
Well, yes, my site is on the Brooklyn Basin, which is earmarked for Oakland Ninth project. And as of right now, there's the investment money on that was from the Chinese, Kwan's administration. So now the city wants to go ahead and move on with that, but they want some more dynamics to it. They want to include affordable housing. And what's going on is now that site needs a developer who will implement affordable housing. So there's a developer I came across in Oakland who I met through Woody Brown, actually. I met him on the street, and he advised me to go talk to Mr. Michael Baines. Mr. Michael Baines has told me he is leading the way. He is going to try to take over and will take over that site, that location. And I've talked to him about the stadium being on that site. Will it be a problem to him and Mr. Mike Ghielmetti? I've been conversating with Mike Ghielmetti from the very start, from 2012. And Mike Ghielmetti has basically told me the A's want this site, the A's want this stadium, the A's want to be here. He has no problems with it whatsoever. He is fully behind it 100%. He's a booster for the A's, Mr. Ghielmetti. And, he wants the A's to be in Oakland just as much as anybody else does. So
that's good. That's good. So that's a major deal, at least, to know that you don't have, a developer opposition, or unlike the Chargers. But sorry, I had to get that in.
We don't want to go there right now,
Actually, I do a little bit later. That's new, because given where I've been this week, that's news, man. I got some questions for you. So,
we can talk off camera about that situation.
All right. Getting back to Oakland, what kind of project cost and finance are we talking about? Understanding that this is obviously very pre-development phase, and this is preliminary. Just want to put, where are we talking about? Deshaan and Rick, whoever wants to answer.
Well, let me jump in when it comes to money. There's no way to really quantify what kind of investment is going to go into either Brooklyn Basin or Estuary Park until they actually go through their complete planning entitlements and the people of Oakland approve and the city council approves what the concepts are. Mm-hmm. Once we know what those footprints are going to be, then you can start putting numbers to it. Conceptually, I think the number that we're working with is that the stadium is going to be a $600 million project. Surrounding development at EP, just Estuary Park, we could see that figure for surrounding development eclipsing that by a few $100,000, whether it be hotels, for the hospitality aspect, parking, retail, those sorts of things. As far as the Oak to Ninth Signature Properties Plan, I can't really speak to that because I just don't have a firm grasp of what their concepts are and what their land use footprint is for that. For Estuary Park, we could see in the range of $1.5 to $2 billion being spent there.
Now, are you talking in terms of financing types, a combination of lease revenue bond financing? And if that's the case, have you earmarked the different revenue sources to this point, at least even preliminarily, like, naming rights, signage, user fees, from that sort of thing?
So many of the things that are bandied about when it comes to stadium financing have an extremely negative impact on the bottom line of the team. Mm-hmm. You have to comprehend how a team operates, what its revenue streams are, what can be considered team revenue, and what can be considered other than team revenue.
I built a computer model on it.
I saw your website. So you know as well as anyone that you'll hear people talk about the naming rights and the PSLs and everything all the way down to pouring rights and parking revenues and everything in between. And you well know, you can read that list and realize that no owner in his right mind is going to agree to some of those things that will come out of community meetings from a layman's perspective. When it comes to financing, there are certain alternatives that have not been deployed for any stadium anywhere that I think we can bring to the table. One of our political problems is finding a jurisdiction that will accept some of our financing elements as the first one up.
Can you elaborate?
That haven't been proven in the real world just yet.
Can you elaborate? Here's why I ask. Because, for example, in the Carson situation, Goldman Sachs announced they were involved.
Right.
Very recently. Now, the mantra has been we're going to do private financing. But, look, I've been alive, I can now say a long time. And when I see that I work with Goldman. When I hear that, I hear a lease revenue bond. That's a public financing.
It is.
And so my thought is, okay, and the reason why I say this that way is I tried to get Goldman to do a truly private financing deal in 1997 when I was representing Elihu, and I got as far as a good month and a half of working with them. I made a presentation to the council committee. Then I got steered to the immunity department, and I was pissed. I was so pissed I wanted to put a fist through the wall. Mm-hmm. Because, and the reason why I say it like that is because, and this is never talked about, but municipal finance organizations put money in the political coffers, and they expect money back for their muni projects, their public financings. And they won't do a private financing. Mm-hmm. Am I speaking out of school? Am I talking about something that's being blocked because of politics in that way?
Speaking out of school, let me go back and just address the idea, if I may,
sure,
of 100% private financing, because that is a mantra that we stand on. Mm-hmm. And I believe we can deliver on that. Some of the things that folks don't bring into account, when someone says 100% private financing, they may be talking about 100% private dollars, but they'll conveniently shuffle under the rug the land grants, the infrastructure bonding, the improvements that are public obligations, or a disposition of public resources in land grants. Those sort of things they can readily say are not I mean, they can say they're not public dollars. They can say no public dollars go into this, but in fact, it's a huge impact on the overall capital stack that it takes to put one of these things together.
MetLife Stadium, perfect example. Yep.
There you go. So when you talk about 100% private funding, that's exactly what we're looking to do. If there's an asset, and when I say an asset, real estate typically, if there's an asset to be acquired or a right-of-way to be acquired, what we want to be able to do and prove as a business model in the real world that can be done at fair market value, because it's a public asset. The public should be compensated for any taking or allocation of real estate or infrastructure to a stadium. We want to compensate the jurisdiction, in this case the city, for any of those dollars that would normally be on the public side. In trying to do that, you have to come up with some real out-of-the-box thinking. And I believe that we've done that. It's been about 2 or 3 weeks since the last time Deshaan and I spoke about the tentative term sheet that we can put forward to the city that, at least in an overview, the 30,000-foot view manner, itemizes where our money comes from, how any debt service obligations are paid, and how the taxpayers in the city of Oakland are not on the hook for that. Now, I've put off sending that to Deshaan, and it's a document I need to get in his hand so he can post on his website, and I'd be anxious to see your review of that document. I should have it here in another week or so. I have some issues with the footprint that we would talk about for ancillary development that goes on with the stadium at Estuary Park. But once I resolve those issues in my mind, and I can do that as a tentative document, because as you well know, a term sheet is simply a starting point for negotiations.
Right.
So we'll set forward the term sheet once I have that footprint and land use footprint that I would like to see in place, and Deshaan is more than welcome to put it up on his website. And you'll see that some of the things that we can tap into that haven't been done before, and it's a long drawn-out explanation. I'd rather you read it in the document yourself first. Things like real estate brokerage revenues, and how do you attach that and apply those revenues to a stadium?
Wait, it sounds like you're making a real estate investment trust of a sort.
Not necessarily. Quite a bit different than that. And there are some things that are going to be controversial in the package. One of those is, and let me take a step back and kind of explain this. Anytime you're trying to put together $600 million for a stadium or $1.5 billion for an overall development, you don't just go find a way to pay back $1.5 billion. There's not one single way to do that. You go to multiple revenue streams, some of the things we've already talked about, but you can't touch, if you're going to keep the team economically viable, you can't touch what is typically and historically team revenue. You have to bring to the table things that are not team revenue. And you'll see some of those things in the term sheet that I believe that we can bring to the table. And we have the backing, at least tentatively now, we have the backing of mid-size, and it's a very big bank nonetheless, but a mid-size Middle Eastern bank to do this project. They understand what we're trying to do. It's never been in Oakland a money problem, whether it's Raiders at CC or A's at EP or wherever you want to put them. It's never been a money problem. Oakland is an attractive city for investment. Bottom line, it's always been a political problem in the city of Oakland. And to Floyd's credit, he's the first one, because I tried. He's the first one that's got the city and the county to stop acting like they're married people that want a divorce. He's managed to accomplish that. He's got them at the table talking, and I think Floyd is going to go a long, long ways now that he's got that done. But when I say private financing, if you would kind of bear with me for another week or two till I get that document in Deshaun's hands, I'd love for you to analyze it, tear it apart, throw the hard questions at me, and I think I can back them up to show you that we're not putting the taxpayer of the city of Oakland at any risk whatsoever.
Fair enough. That'll definitely be worth waiting for. We'll attach that to this video as a link, so that right about the time you talk about it, it pops up and a person can go and look at it at Zennie62.com.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's definitely the case. Absolutely. Do you know if what the timetable is in terms of what are the next steps? Let me put it that way. We mentioned the term sheet. What do you see as the next steps in total? And within that, have you talked with any Oakland electeds about this at all?
the last people I spoke with was Gene Kwan, and when I say Gene Kwan, who I really mean is Deanna Santana from Fred Blackwell, the administrative side. And Gene was a prize of those conversations by Deanna and Fred. Of course, all three of those folks are gone.
Right.
So the new administration, I've made no inroads, no outreach to, because in not putting the cart before the horse, I wanted Stadium 365 to be out there. I wanted to create the finance document to be an attachment to that, and then approach the electeds with that body of work.
What about?
I know some of the folks who are still in office have been here for the long term. Nate, for one, and a number of the other folks who are players in this. Rebecca, they've been in office for a good bit of time, and they'll continue in office, and we can tap into previous conversations with them.
What about the council president, Lynette Gibson McElhaney, who was also council presiding over that area we're talking about?
Again, I have not.
Actually, it's more her. Yeah, it's her seeping into Ohio, but it's more her at that point. Yeah.
I haven't had those conversations.
Okay.
You know,
so Lynette, you're watching this. We got you in mind. Don't worry.
the real story here, in my mind, is that the story is D'Sjon Dixon and a vision for Estuary Park and a solution that works. I could make a TV show out of that. but I'm telling you, we could make a celebrity out of this young man. But that's the real story. And I go back to money is not a problem to Oakland. Money flows to Oakland right now from a private development side. It's purely political. I want D'Sjon's work to be out there so the public can grasp that work, so the electeds can grasp that work. Then we'll back it up with a financing structure that anyone and everyone is willing to throw stones at. And believe me, in my process in Sacramento and my process in San Diego, I know that the higher on the ladder you go, the more likely you are to get the bricks thrown at you. So I've got a pretty thick skin about people trying to tear apart my document that I know will work to build Mr. Dixon Stadium.
Well, I think more importantly, it's not a matter of tearing apart a document or design, but a matter of tweaking them so they can work better, right?
Better term, and I guess I go back to the introductory page of these submittals that I've had, where it talks about bringing all stakeholders to the table. If you alienate any of the stakeholders, and I know from experience, you can't quite figure out who all those stakeholders are, because there will be a perceived larger stakeholder and a perceived smaller stakeholder, but there should be no larger or smaller.
Well,
all stakeholders have to be valued at the table.
You got to befriend the Vivian Kahns of the world out there.
Yeah. All stakeholders have to feel valued. It's as simple as that.
And I say that because I'm going to send this to Vivian and say, hey, Vivian, get behind the project.
I appreciate any work you can do in that regard.
Hey, Deshaan, do you have a physical model that people can touch? Or will you have one at some point in the near future?
Sure. I love physical models. That's something that we learned to do in architecture school. I can't wait to stick my hands into that. The design is always evolving. The designer's problem is design is never done. Design is done enough to a point where we can do a tangible physical model on it, yes, and all the areas around it that we're trying to do to make it complementary to 365.
Did you have a particular baseball stadium in mind when you put this concept together, this design?
Yes, well, we took a lot of different baseball concepts. We wanted to see what worked. We know that now, just the way baseball is evolutionizing, they're not in the rural part of cities anymore. They want to be right within the urban fabric. And you even have some stadiums that did it right the first time and they don't have to change it again. Chicago, Wrigley, Boston, and I love Pittsburgh Stadium. St. Louis was a stadium that we looked at. Definitely San Diego. And we basically want to step out of San Francisco's shadow as a city of Oakland. Want the stadium to be rival to San Francisco Giants Stadium, and just to be as good or if not better in the long run, but make it for the city of Oakland, specifically the way the residents and the fans are, and the way they carry themselves in the character to express that in only the way that you can do in Oakland. And hopefully that's something that the Major League Baseball will take into consideration or embrace some of the moves that we're trying to do.
I'm going to let that be the final statement because we're at past the 30-minute mark. It's going to be a great long video, but not the first time we'll talk. We'll be back. Anything else you want to add in closing?
I'd just like to touch base with you a little bit later on, Zennie, and we can talk about real-world application of new solutions.
We got a lot to talk about. Deshaan as well. Hey, thank you, gentlemen.